Someone taught me that if you want to learn how to do something, who do you go to? Someone who knows how to do it.
We started with the Burning Man, and I just like kind of following the conversation and the flow, but I do want to circle back there because that is what I guess maybe the most curious about. So how did you find yourself going to Burning Man? Were you going there just as someone who was experiencing the event? Or from what I understand, in either one of these it works, you went there and you helped out, you were involved in the event. So tell me that story.
Yeah, thank you. I've been there in many capacities, in many personal roles. One as just the guy that wanted to go. I had a girlfriend who told me about it, and her mother and her auntie Lulu used to go, and they're all wonderful people. They're highly intelligent, highly creative. I mean, like, they can make beauty out of anything, and it flowed into writing, gardening, packaging, and even the beauty of communication with them. She is one of the most wonderful people I know. And when I first met her, just she sparkled. And so when she told me about, and I saw her and her mother and her aunt's life, the things that they made, the beauty that they created as artists, I wanted that. I didn't have that in my life, in my early life. I wanted it. It was like that I want, like when,
Yeah.
and that's someone, Martine Vosgelle. She's a friend of mine that's a sculptor. She's an American sculptor that left because of politics years ago and lives in France. And she said that the purpose of an artist is to make art, and the purpose of art is to make artists. And nothing truer has ever been said to me. In the case of my friends, what I saw them make, I wanted to know how to make. I wanted to be a maker too. I was, but not at that level of aesthetics or whatever. So when they said Burning Man's a cool place to go, I was like, okay, I guess I need to go there. And I kept on circling back to that. And then finally, one fine day in 2008, I got a ticket, went online. I found out that they're in different cities, they have burners, like local chapters. It's like the Hell's Angels, you have like the San Francisco chapter and the New York chapter or whatever. They have Burning Man chapters.
Nice.
And they were and are really wonderful people, makers, creators, a little bit like on the edge of society, I would say. But also the ones I met, there are a lot of geniuses in there. I mean, there were like architects, tech people, plumbers, metal workers, writers, moms, nurses, teachers, engineers, people that knew how to do solar power stuff. And I was like, wow, what a group of people to hang out with. And they had a chapter in St. Louis. So I lived in Cape Girardeau at the time, so I would drive up there. And on Wednesday nights, they had like meet and greets at some bar. It was the Atomic Cowboy on Manchester. And so it was on Wednesday nights, and I would go there and they'd have really cheap beer. And then in the back, they had fire performers. So, I'm like a little kid inside. To me, like to go to a place where I'm going to meet cool people and they're spinning fire at the same time and they're really cool and stuff. I'm like, oh my God, I want to be you, I wanted to be with them all the time. And so I had a lot of questions about Burning Man, like what's it like? Rugged individualism, you're self-sufficient and you're supposed to make art. You could do performance art, you can do spoken word, you can contribute something in an artistic way. So, I would go and I would like a hummingbird go to the feeder, to get the juice. And then I'd go home and I'd like start fantasizing about it and stuff. And then finally, I didn't really know anyone there and I was a little insecure about meeting people and stuff. So I'm like, give me a job. So I volunteered in center camp. And I thought, well, that way I'll be center camp is in the center of everything. And that's where their performance, they had performers that were there. And I got a job as they call it gear god. I mic'd acts, drummers. I put this type of microphone for hi-hats, this type for bass. Singer needs this type of microphone. And I would run the lines to the sound engineer, which would then go to the sound booth. And so not only did I get myself a cool job, but I was like right in the, these performers would come on. So now you have performers, other artists, right? And they have these fantastic costumes and being in the audience and being like just off stage, entirely different experience. You got like the performer's face right there, their mouth opening, the sound coming out. There's no spit spraying, but it's like that kind of close. And their hair, because a lot of people from the Bay Area, so it's like hippies, right? And they're beautiful, dreadlocks and great makeup. And then one day they had this band. It was like a marching band. It was like the circus came to town. They were like these beautiful girls on stilts, and these guys that were dressed like clowns and drums and horns. And you're right in the middle of this like parade, cacophonous, beautiful visual, audio, immersive experience is like priceless beyond words, right?
Center
So,
stage at center camp. That
yeah,
is so cool.
yeah. And I worked there. I was only supposed to work 4 hours shifts. And, I used to be a doctor. So I'm used to working like 16 hours, 18 hours, easy peasy. And so my 4 hours turned into 20 hours. I worked like 16 to 20-hour shifts. They'd be like, dude, go sleep. And I'm like, no, I want to be here. I want like every second of this. So that was my first time. I rode out there on my motorcycle. And so there's like a 2,200-mile motorcycle trip with all my stuff on the back of it. It piled up. I had it was in 2004 BMW 650 GS. So it's a smaller bike. It's like an adventure, the baby adventure bike. And the whole back of it was gear. It was like Beverly Hillbillies where, they're moving out to Beverly Hills. I had like those 5-gallon liter water containers on the back empty till I got there. And then I was going to fill it at a gas station so I would have water, and you had toilet paper and you had towels. And I'm like a nutcake when it comes to gear and camping anyway. So, I always bring like 10 times what I need. And clothes, like I need a winter coat because it gets colder. I need rain gear. I need boots, I need flip flops. All this shit was like piled up behind me. And, when I showed up, other people would have like a van, or a trailer. And I had everything on, on my bike. It was like these guys that you see in India, that put like goats on the back of their scooters and stuff like that, and it had that vibe to it.
Yeah.
So I was hooked. I always went out. Last year was the only year that I didn't go out there on a motorcycle, I think. So I've gone 4 or 5 times. I've usually volunteered and worked there. After they saw me working 20 hours, when other people would come to work pretty high and were unable to function as well as they should have, and I didn't do drugs, so I was like a reliable guy that would work all the time, and they loved me. So the next year, I got a free ticket. I got commissary privileges, and which included being able to take a shower a day. The first year, when I got home, I took my pants off and I stood them in the corner of my studio for like a week, and they stayed. Like they stayed vertical. They had so much
Yeah.
playa dust and whatever in there that it was like clay that hardened. It just stood up on its own. So that was the jam. And coming back that first time, there's a lot of techno music and stuff. So, and it was like round the clock because I stayed near a place that had it playing like almost at all hours. So I was riding on my motorcycle someplace in Colorado, and I could feel my thighs throbbing to the beat of techno music. It's like muscle memory. It got so absorbed in me that I could still feel the dum, 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 dum inside of me. It was amazing. And I felt like that's my personal experience. Now I mentioned the stage stuff. Well, there's experiences all over, like I was sitting at the camp that I was staying at. They had like, everybody brings like sofas and stuff out there. So you're outside in the middle of the desert. It's like 90 degrees in the daytime and like, 60 at night sometimes. So you get cold, but you're sitting on a sofa, like in the desert. It's bizarre.
Right.
And so we're sitting and he's like, well, his name is Pickle. He's a metalsmith. I think he went to SIU, Edwardsville, maybe Carbondale. He's a phenomenal non-ferrous metal artist. So he's welcoming me to Burning Man and getting to know me a little bit and telling me, he appreciates me being there and all this stuff. And while we're talking, they have these things, I forgot what they're called, but they're kind of like they're leg attachments that start below your knee, and there's like a foot pedal on it, and then there's a spring, like a leaf spring that goes underneath it. And you could run on them. So,
Mhm.
and I've seen dudes like on YouTube, they're like kangaroo extensions or whatever, like almost like running stilts. I've seen people just like bouncing around a parking lot and like go spoing and end up on top of a dock and go spoing and on top of an AC unit. So there's
Wow.
like 8 to 10 dudes just trucking down this dusty road on those things at about 30 miles an hour. I mean, they're just like,
Wow.
choom, past you. And, I'm just not used to that. I'm sorry,
Oh,
so
no.
blew my mind. And someone said, Zen, come out with us, adventure, see stuff, So I go out in the middle of the playa in a desert. There's scaffolding set up. And who's performing there? The freaking Joffrey Ballet, you know, in the middle of the desert. And another night, Symphony Orchestra. So classical music in a moonlit night out in the middle of the desert for free,
Yeah.
and it's just constant stuff. Or I go to a bar and it's a stilt bar. You know what that means? Everybody there is on stilts. So the bar is like way over my head. And for them, that's normal height because they're on stilts. And I'm lost, I'm totally lost because I hadn't figured out the
Hey,
rope.
what's a guy gotta do to get a drink around here?
Yeah. So I'm like pulling on someone's skirt, and looking up. I feel like I'm 5 years old when you're with your mommy and daddy and you're next to their knee, and you're one directions. It was totally reliving that. All this and visuals, these costumes that people made, it was like I pulled in at like 4 a.m. on my motorcycle, ride in, I get welcomed. It's a kind of a ritual thing where they ring a bell and welcome you to your home. For that week, they build the second largest city in Nevada. And in a week and a half, it's gone
Wow.
completely. And in a couple
Wow.
weeks after that, it's like pristine. They go through and pick up little tinsel strands, and cigarette butt, whatever people inadvertently drop, they clean all that up. So the Bureau of Land Management will relicense them for the next year. That's the agreement.
That's
So
fascinating.
yeah, so it's just constant. So I pull in and I'm there it's about 4 a.m. It's quiet. The camp's quiet, but there's people riding around on bicycles silently with these beautiful, it's like ballet costumes, these transparent fabrics that are just kind of shimmering in the night air. And they're not saying anything and you don't know what's going on, but they're like riding by you. And it's like being in like on stage in some desert theater or whatever. I've heard my friends that have been to Vietnam and countries where there are a lot of bicycles. You have all these people riding on bicycles, kind of weaving in and out of each other in huge crowds. And it's like a silent ballet. It's a silent dance between everybody where they're all going about their lives to shop or to go home or whatever. And you're just externally watching the movement. And it's like visual crack. There's something so beautiful in the movement of a crowd that is enchanting. So Burning Man has a lot of those elements in. And
Yeah,
this
it
past
sounds
year yeah, sorry, I had a break, of a few years, and then I'm getting older now, so I was like, "I wanna do this while I can," and so I went back to one group that I was always watched and wanted to be a part of is called DPW, the Department of Public Works. And those are all the lunatic mayhem makers that do construction, and party hardy. And I mean, they blow shit up. I mean, literally, they'll like shoot anvils into the air,
wow.
and blow dynamite out up. And they operate heavy equipment, and so they build Burning Man. They build the infrastructure. They lay the electrical lines under the playa, and this, where you don't see it. They move shipping containers. They have bulldozers. They have giant forklifts, ATV forklifts. If you need to set up an artwork or a sculpture, they're there, with the equipment to help you pull it off. I wanted to be part of them. And this year I was blessed to be able to do so. So that's what I did. I worked on a ranch for a week and a half, just kind of helping out. And then the last week prior to, I worked helping put center camp up, the tent, which is the world's largest tension shade structure or something. So it's either largest or second largest. So it was great for me because that's where I began. And now I've come back home to that place and wonderful crew. You leave connected with everybody and you can't wait to see him again. And it was really wonderful.
Yeah, that is super fascinating. Just going from being able to be a spectator and seeing all of, like you just described it, just the myriad of different sensory things there, the stilts bar, the symphony orchestra, that it's just this, like you said, the largest city in Nevada while it's there, and all of the delights that you can find there. And then on the other end, you're talking about how you put in the effort and you coordinated and you found the group of people you liked working with, and you've also served that community as well. So you've talked about all those great experiences. Were there some times there while you were either helping out, volunteering, or something where you're like, "Whoa, this is not quite what I signed up for.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know if this is my scene."
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a line and, Dune 1 and 2, I guess, is out and 3 is coming out, but that's one of my favorite books. The movie is from the Frank Herbert book, and there's a whole series of them. I was addicted to those. And there is a line where Maldi, Paul's mother, says, it's a mantra, and it's fear is the mind killer. Let it pass through you, come in front of you, in you, and through you. And that really stuck, so throughout my entire life, when I found something that I was afraid of, I would try to do it. I would face the fear, whether it be like in mountain climbing or in art or motorcycles or right before I was going to die in a motorcycle related maneuver or whatever.
Mhm.
I would just like grasp that and get through it somehow. And I think that's a really good thing about life, because a lot of people think that they can't do something. Can't tell you how many times I'd say, "Oh, you're an artist. I wish I could do that. I don't have that in me." I'm like, that's the biggest lie anyone ever told themselves. They just buy
Yeah.
into this bullshit that they can't do something, and I blame their teachers or someone in their life that at a very early age, they put this little seed in their mind that kills them, that makes them live the rest of their life thinking that they can't do what they want to do. That's hell. And people do that to each other. So, that's why I do half the stuff I do, I think,
That's
because,
awesome.
and then when
Yeah,
I,
I love that. I love the way you described that and the way that you're kind of fighting back against that toxicity. Those little seeds of doubt, those little toxic seeds that can implant themselves in someone's brain, their psyche, and then that sets the trajectory of their life whenever, like you said, you're talking about paradigm shifts. And I love how you're trying to fight those. You're trying to break those down and you're trying to say, no, that's BS. That you are an artist. You can be creative. You are a creative. Don't let that one person's bit of feedback or offhanded comment take mountain ranges and of beauty out of your life.
yeah, for sure.
So, with that being said, we're all needing to take feedback, right? So, in our courses of study at SIUC, and I'm sure in some of your past professional lives and mine as well, we would have like critiques or debriefs, we would call them. So,
Yeah,
even after every training run, you would have the range safety staff, whoever it was that's putting on that training event. You do the run, you do your tactics, you do whatever, then we'd all step back and then we'd debrief it and we would critique how we did, what we did well, what we did poorly, and what really absolutely needs to change to keep people alive. And here's some areas for improvement. So in art school, we have critiques as well, where it's vital for growth. But you kind of listed some of those pitfalls of critique in what in your story there. When do you feel like feedback becomes poison?
that's another thing from Dune. There was a scene where Paul, to expand his mind, he feels he's born to be something special. He's like the awaited one, kind of like a messiah, you know. But so what happens, he arrives on this planet, and on the planet they have this thing, they're mining this thing called spice, and
Mhm.
it has a mind shifting quality. So when he's there, he starts to inhale it, and then he feels, his prescience starting to increase. He's starting to have visions. And then now he ends up with the Fremen, I guess. And he gets himself into this situation where he drinks of the water that baby worm has been drowned in, that only women can drink. So this is Frank Herbert, right? But it's also the Garden of Eden and the Tree of Knowledge, and it's common in a lot of myths, for the hero to go on this journey and do something that nearly destroys him or is going to destroy him. And then he grows from it instead. So he takes this poison and it kills him. And while it's really at a point where they think he's dead, but his mind or his soul is still external to his body, and he spots that molecule in his body, and he's able to change it. In organic chemistry, you have these carbon and hydrogen and oxygen and nitrogen are all linked together in a certain way, and they have isomers and stereoisomers. So there's a right hand and a left-handed isomer that match each other in chemistry. And so he is able to alter this molecule where it's no longer a poison, and it ends up evolving him beyond anyone's belief, right? So critique is like that. I mean, if you'd asked me this a week ago, I probably wouldn't have told you that, but this is new. This is the flow. We're in a flow state here, right?
I love it.
And
I love
critique
it.
is sometimes I find it extremely destructive, because people who don't know you, they don't know what you're trying to do. Maybe you have some idea, but you don't have your idea fully developed. And now they're evaluating for you what you're doing, what they think you're doing. And then you're like, it's a shock to you because someone is validating or invalidating you or misinterpreting you. And they're your friends. You've been in class with them, for a few weeks, or a few months, and you value them. You love them. And now
Mhm.
they're telling you this stuff, and you sit there and, sometimes it's no big deal because people could be a little disingenuous and just tell you like happy horseshit stuff. But they're not really
They're
telling
just
you.
there trying to get a grade.
Yeah,
I said something in the critique so that you can mark me as a participation. No.
yeah. But if you really know what I think. Yeah, so and that's, I think we all know that, but anyway, you walk away that day and you're like, "What the hell happened here?" And, like, I never wanna go back there again in my life, and then in the first couple times it happens, it's destructive, and I know people who have been in art school and other schools who've quit. They used to go like, "Screw you guys. I'm never coming back here." And a professor will like ream them too, because this professor is maybe insecure or has their own problems and or they're trying to destroy you to help you grow. It's all BS. You can help someone grow without destroying them. they're going to destroy themselves if they're going to destroy themselves. So you don't really have to worry about it. Why do you have to take that on your plate? So after a day or two, and I process what was said and what I know, who am I and who do they think I am? You know, a person's three things: who they say they are, who other people think they are, and who they really are. So when you sit in your quietude, and meditate on it, you have to look at yourself. What am I doing? No one knows that except me. I can communicate it, but sometimes I communicate it poorly, or because of their inherent filters and biases, etc., they don't get it. You know,
Right.
There's not enough time to go back and forth because the next person has to have their critique. So it's inherently flawed, period. So the way out is you sit in your stuff and you go, what did I do? What am I trying to do? Am I a bullshitter? Am I being honest? Did I make something good? Do I know if I make something, I know where I screwed up. I don't need someone to point that out to me. If I'm looking at it, I see it. I keep on looking at the same thing. So therefore I know. So,
Right.
and then you have to listen to what came into you from other people. And if it's doesn't match what you know to be true, away, done with you, erased. So you have to do that. And it's going to happen whether it be staged like it is in school or in life, which is going to be more real because you're going to be starving, you're not getting paid, or you're not going to be successful like you would want to be because someone else is they're giving you their answer with their feet. They're like
Mhm.
walking away from you because they don't want it. So there's your critique right there. They're not buying it. That's your critique.
Yep.
So school has that nuance built. The critique system has that nuance built into it for sure. And, I am an older dude. I'm not 19. I'm not 20. I'm not even 30. I'm not even 40. I'm not even 50. So, and was a different person at all of those ages. So if I was a 20-year-old and someone did that to me, it might hurt a little bit more than it does now because I did not have enough of a sense of myself to know what I'm saying right now. So that's kind of a thing built into it. The other thing is the university system. In a art institute, a formal art school, usually you'll have a professor teach you or someone, a new professor or an established one, and they're supposed to be more seasoned to help you develop more. In a state institution, that rarely happens. You have a graduate student teaching you. And I love graduate students. I love their work. I'm always blown away by the stuff that they create. I mean, always. Because you just see people walking around, you don't know what they make, but you see them on the final class or whatever, and you're like, "Holy cow, you made that?" It's a lot of
Right.
talent there. But some of them can't teach. They're just, like, fresh off the farm or whatever, not
Mhm.
and that's probably I wish they were fresh off the farm because farm people know how to do stuff, they know how to make things, they have a good discipline, good responsibility, so it's probably the wrong analogy. But they're green, and
Mhm.
they don't know how to teach, and they're there to learn just like anyone else is. And when I'm a freshman or if I'm a senior, I'm paying the same tuition as anyone else. Like I don't get a break. And
Mhm.
if I'm paying for something, I want all I can get for that, the most bang for my buck. I don't want someone who doesn't know how to do stuff teaching me. Like, what's the point of that? You're never going to get anywhere except learn what not to do. And that's my other thing. Like someone taught me that if you want to learn how to do something, who do you go to? Someone who knows how to do it. You know,
Great
that's who you
advice.
get your advice from.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and you know what? You think, oh, they're too good to talk to me. They're too busy. They're not gonna. They've been through all this stuff. A lot of them. they're gonna open their hearts up to you and take you into their arms, and they know what they're dealing with. And that, a really good person, a charismatic person of any kind, whether it be a writer or whatever, will go like, "Dude, I get it. I hear you. I've been you, and I'm gonna help you. This is how you weld. This is how you write. This is how you interview someone." They know how to do it. They're giving. They're more than willing to help you.
Right. So in that vein, I think you've kind of broken it down pretty well for us, but I just want to kind of maybe pull that thread a little bit more.
Sure.
How do you distinguish between a mentor, kind of like you're describing, who is there trying to make you better, and a critic who's just there to tear you down or to even just project their own life circumstances outwards to you and your work? And how would you recommend someone going about finding that true mentor?
Well, number one,